This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Free agency for the Cleveland Browns is on the horizon. And one of the things that we've been interested to see with the Cleveland Browns' free agency is where are they going to take their big swing, right? The Browns usually take a big swing in free agency, especially under Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski's run as GM and head coach. 2020 took big swings on Jack Conklin and Austin Hooper. In 2021, they brought in Jadeveon Clowney, John Johnson, who were big swings at the time. In 2022, they brought in Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson. 2023, they bring in Dalvin Tomlinson and Juan Thornhill. The Browns are going to try to go after a name. Now, the thing that would qualify for this or really kind of temper your expectations is that this is probably the most complete the Browns roster has ever been under Andrew Berry and Stefanski, which might make them a little bit more hesitant to do a big swing type move. But also, on the other hand, this is the most complete a roster has been under Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. And look, the Browns' goals are obvious. They want to win a Super Bowl. If they just wanted to be a decent team, they wouldn't have cut bait on Baker Mayfield, right? Because you could be a decent team with Baker, but they felt like they couldn't win a championship with Baker Mayfield. They felt like their chances to win a championship are better with Deshaun Watson. That's why you make that move. And that's why you pay Deshaun Watson the money that you paid him. It's because you feel like he's a type of quarterback that you can get to that point. We'll see if that becomes true by the end of that contract or not. But that's why they made the move, to be a real Super Bowl contender. So you might not just be satisfied with having a good roster. And one of the things that's popped up over the last few weeks is Christian Wilkins' name and the Browns connected. Now, this isn't a guarantee, but Jeremy Fowler, who is a pretty credible insider at ESPN, said there will be several teams in the mix if Wilkins does not, in fact, hit the open market. He listed the Houston Texans, the Cleveland Browns as teams who could be in the open market. The Browns are always good for a splash or two, for instance, Fowler stated, would they strengthen an already stout defense with a versatile defensive tackle? So that's what Jeremy Fowler thinks, and it's important to note, when ESPN sends somebody national to Browns camp, it's usually Jeremy Fowler, right? It's been that the last couple of years, at least I can confirm. So Jeremy Fowler is a bit more connected with the Browns than most national people. So it's not like he's just sitting on his couch, like trying to figure out things to get people interested. Like Jeremy Fowler is in Browns camp. He has a relationship with Andrew Berry. Like I've seen those two interact before, and I've seen Jeremy Fowler kind of be intertwined with Browns stuff before. So this is not nothing, right? That the Browns are interested in Christian Wilkins. And it makes sense because I think Jim Schwartz is going to shift from the traditional plan with Myles Garrett being, hey, let's see what we can do if we get another edge across from Myles Garrett, right? It's usually the conventional wisdom with Myles Garrett. Bookend the edges so teams cannot double team Myles Garrett. And that works for guys like TJ Watt. That works for guys, who are good to great to Hall of Fame edge rushers. But that doesn't work for Myles Garrett. Because the hope when you have the two bookend edge rushers is that you put so much pressure on both sides that teams are forced to not double team the one dominant guy. But that's not how it goes anymore, right? The conventional wisdom has been broken by the presence of Myles Garrett, which is to say teams are not gonna never double team Myles Garrett. Like, unless you clone Myles Garrett and put him on the opposite side of Myles Garrett, they're always gonna double team Myles Garrett. And even if you clone Myles Garrett gonna get double teamed on one side, he gonna get double teamed on another side. They'll figure out a way to make sure that Myles Garrett does not get a single team. There's a reason why, despite the fact that Myles Garrett had record help, like more help than he's ever had in his career, he still was in the top of the league for double team rate. Teams don't care who you have on the other side. Honestly, they prepare for Myles in a way that makes it kind of irrelevant who's on the other side, because their plan for Myles is to double team Myles Garrett and to throw the ball very quickly. And when that's the case, you really don't need another superstar edge to bookend Myles Garrett. It's not really going to change anything. It's just going to be another dude that's going to be watching the quarterback throw the ball after like 2 seconds. So maybe the resources aren't best spent at the other edge position. Maybe the resources are better spent around Myles Garrett, right? If they're already gonna double team Myles Garrett, if they're already gonna do all this stuff for Myles Garrett, why not overwhelm that side of the wall that they're trying to build up really well, and then just blast through the middle? So when teams are trying to throw the ball quickly, another thing that is a factor in stopping that, right? If teams are going to say, hey, we're going to double team Myles and we're going to throw the ball quickly, what is something that can help against that? What are 2 things that are always good against those kind of concepts? Interior pressure and long interior defensive linemen. The reason those things are very effective is, one, interior pressure completely messes up your footwork as a quarterback. So inaccurate passes, short passes that are inaccurate, especially when the defense knows that they're likely to come because you're afraid of Myles Garrett, can turn into turnovers very easily, and at the very least can turn into tackles for losses very easily. We saw this in play with the Browns defense most of the year, where teams were just trying to get rid of the ball quickly. They throw a screen, JOK there, bam. Grant Delpit there, bam. Greg Newsome there, bam. Denzel Ward there, bam. Martin Emerson there, bam, right? It's very hard to stretch this defense when it comes to those kind of quick passes, because this team's already super fast. And if you're speeding that clock up by getting some interior pressure with a dominant interior defensive lineman like Christian Wilkins, then that's really going to do a lot of damage to a team, right? We talked about it this offseason. The plan has to shift from conventional wisdom, opposite of Myles Garrett, to getting a little creative about how you're going to overwhelm these protection plans when they do the full Myles protection, right? And I think the solution is at linebacker. I think the solution is at safety with Grant Delpit. I think the solution is with a really, really like a hellraiser at the interior defensive line position, and Christian Wilkins most certainly fits that bill. He's been a pretty solid player almost his entire NFL career. You can see here, here are his numbers as they've gotten up. His pass rushing has gotten much better over the last few years. Run defense is pretty stout, not coming off of his greatest year, but this is a dude who is a prime Andrew Berry target, right? 28 years old, so he's right in that sweet spot to be on his prime for a couple of years with the Cleveland Browns. High athletic, high IQ, long, strong defender, 6'4", 310. So he's not, Dalvin Tomlinson's a bit more of a stout defensive tackle. Christian Wilkins is long. And if you look at the Browns defensive line, where you can see some possible solutions are at the edge, right? Where the Browns can throw Obo Okoronkwo, who you're pretty happy with the body of work that he gave you this year on that edge position. And then also you can throw out like Alex Wright and maybe even Isaiah McGuire. Like, the thing is that the Browns don't get Zadarius Smith back. They have options behind him. Not somebody who's going to get 10 sacks themselves, but between those 3 players, they could get 12. And that might be enough to just have the help that you want on the opposite side. Because again, I don't think you need a superstar to play on the opposite side of Myles Garrett, because you're basically asking somebody to win a one-on-one, and on the off chance that they on the chance that they roll towards you, clean up a quick sack, right? Like just clean up duty. You don't need a dominant Pro Bowl edge rusher there. Where you do need a Pro Bowler is in that interior, right? Because we saw the games where the Browns struggled was when their defensive tackles could not win their two-way goals when teams double team Myles Garrett. It happened in the Broncos game. It happened in the Seattle game. Those two games stick out there, even in the Texans game, right? Where you couldn't win those two-way goals. When you look at the Browns' biggest wins of the year, you usually see big games from their interior defensive tackles. Look at the game that Dalvin Tomlinson had versus San Francisco. Look at the game that Dalvin Tomlinson and others had in that second game versus the Baltimore Ravens. When the Browns looked their best is when they were getting that interior pressure, because that interior pressure and the stress of having to know if JOK is coming and Grant Delpit, that does something to break those protection plans that teams try to use against Myles Garrett, because it just exploits them. It just busts them wide open because there's only so much you can account for. I think Christian Wilkins, in the same vein that I would be very excited about Chris Jones. Obviously, Chris Jones, a much better player than Christian Wilkins, but Christian Wilkins is still a very high caliber. Like, if you're able to get Christian Wilkins, that's a big deal for this team. And I would be super excited about this. It feels like something that could happen. And the reason it feels like something that could happen is because this is right in Andrew Berry's wheelhouse. This is something that Andrew Berry would certainly do. He fits the profile, and this is something that makes sense. Now, would you be able to get Christian Wilkins? That's a big question. I think Christian Wilkins is going to be a little bit difficult to get. The money has to be there. The Browns can free up some money and say, hey, screw it. We're going to go all in for these next couple of years. We're not going to be flexible in 2027. But by then, either Deshaun Watson's contract has expired or we have renewed and extended him, and we're on to the next thing, right? The next window. So this could be it. Like, I know people are expecting the Browns to kind of keep that flexibility, but at some point you got to cash in your poker chips, and this might be the year. Andrew Berry has said it, where he says that this team is close, right? And GMs don't usually say that kind of thing publicly. That suggests to me that he really does think that this team is close to winning a championship. Now, getting Christian Wilkins will be difficult. The money will certainly have to be found. They have to figure out a way to get that money done. They can, especially if this is a multi-year deal, right? They'll just push some money down the line, probably void this thing out to 2029, 2030, and find a way to get him that money and get him in a good number for the next 2 years. Now, recruiting him, that's where Deshaun Watson comes in, right? Deshaun Watson has proven to be an effective recruiter, right? He brought back Jadavion for whatever that's worth. Guys do still think highly of him, or at least highly enough of him in NFL circles that they're willing to play for him. And Christian Wilkins is a former teammate of his, won a national championship with him at Clemson. So you would think that there's some kind of relationship there between Christian Wilkins and Deshaun Watson, some kind of mutual respect of, hey, if Christian Wilkins is looking to go to a championship contender, he sees Deshaun Watson as somebody who can take a team to the championship because he's been on the team where Deshaun Watson has taken them to a championship. So you have that element in recruiting there. I think the stars and the cards align for something crazy to happen, and Christian Wilkins might just be that crazy. And if it does happen, I think that'd be a very good thing for the Cleveland Browns. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.